Okay. Welcome. I would like to call the meeting to order of the Novi Board of Education. It is February 18th, 2021. And if I can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook.
Here.
Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena is here. Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Trustee Roney.
Here.
Trustee Ruskin.
Here.
And Trustee Smith.
Here.
Okay. I had asked Mrs. Hood if she would do the Pledge of Allegiance for us. So if we can please rise.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood, and don't worry, you'll be called on next, my fellow board members. If we can get an approval of the agenda, I'll ask for a recommendation.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. We can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Hood.
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes.
And Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We now have our first opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. As everyone knows, we have been doing remote virtual meetings. So comments from the audience are submitted via Google form, and Dr. Matthews is our reader and Mr. Mena is our timer. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. We have 8 comments this evening. Most of them are related to return to school, which is technically not on our agenda, but I think is of concern to the board. So I'll read them at this point as opposed to waiting until the end of the second comment period. Elizabeth Baker. Dear Dr. Matthews and members of the Board of Education, I am profoundly disappointed that the Novi Community School District would create a full return plan without seeking input from the district's teachers. Teachers should have been full partners in the planning process. Second comment is from Kim Osmundson. Dear Novi Board of Education, my name is Kim Osmundson, a teacher and one of the Novi EA Vice Presidents. I'm very concerned about your decision to return hybrid students to 5-day in-person instruction. To do this, the newest CDC guidelines will have to be disregarded. The CDC published 6 mitigation methods for in-person instruction, but prioritized 2 of them, one of which is physical distancing by at least 6 feet. When all hybrid students return full in-person instruction, there will be very little social distancing possible in classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, bathrooms, and buses. Telling the community and staff that you will do your best to have social distancing as much as possible without our existing space is unacceptable. According to the CDC, if community transmission is low, but school and community mitigation strategies are not implemented or are inconsistently implemented, then the risk of exposure and subsequent transmission of SARS-CoV-2 in schools will increase. Another concern is that you are not allowing a transition period. All hybrid students return immediately to a 5-day in-person week. Virtual Wednesdays with buildings emptied for cleaning will be gone. With more students, the buildings will need to be cleaned more frequently, but now much less time to do so properly. In addition to this, many staff still have not been able to make an appointment for their initial dose of the vaccine. This virus is dangerous. It kills people or leaves many people with permanent health issues. This happens to be the old, the young, and everyone in between. I recently lost a family member to COVID-19. He was healthy and did not take part in risky behaviors, but he was still infected. His wife was also infected. She survived, but has months of recovery ahead with the likelihood of having permanent health issues. Yes, students need to be in school, but not when it puts them or the staff at risk. In the big picture, this year is a very small part of our students' lives. Students are resilient. They will be well educated and they will thrive. Please reconsider your decision to return all hybrid students to full-time in-person instruction when all CDC protocols cannot be followed and vaccines are in short supply. Thank you for your time. Third comment is from Heather Burnside. Good evening, board members. I'm writing on behalf of the Novi Education Association. I've received many communications from members since the February 4th Board of Education meeting. Many of our staff are frustrated and disappointed by what we consider to be the premature return of hybrid students to full in-person instruction. We certainly understand parents' desires for their students to be in school for full 5 days of instruction. While there is no argument that this is the best, most effective way to work with students, there are many different opinions on when doing so would be safe. In a recent staff survey, fewer than 10% of our instructional staff felt returning students to full classrooms was safe. The majority of our members feel that the metrics the district is using to bring staff back to full classes are not based on scientifically researched threshold numbers, and the CDC's latest guidance for schools confirms those sentiments. Over 90% of our members surveyed felt the district should have waited until the community transmission threshold numbers decreased further and teachers were prioritized to receive both vaccines. At this point, many staff are very concerned that their safety is not being valued, which they find incredibly disheartening when they are working harder than they have ever before for the students and families of our district. Throughout the past year, I've witnessed the hard work and personal sacrifice from staff members and administrators as they make our students' education the very best it can be during a truly unprecedented time. While many of our members are deeply concerned about returning to full classrooms, they continue to go above and beyond for our students, just as we have day in and day out throughout the pandemic and beyond. But please know this is not how most would have chosen to return, and many are doing so with a great deal of anxiety and concern for their own safety as well as that of their family. Our members would have preferred a return plan that took more scientifically based metrics into account when considering a safe return to full classrooms. Comment 4. Katie Bassett. I'm a 10th grader and I wanted to address going back to school 5 days a week. I've talked to many friends and other students who have addressed their concern for safety. If we go back to school with everyone, that will make it impossible for social distancing and other essential safety protocols. Also, the cafeteria is going to be filled with no social distancing and people will have no mask on while talking and laughing, making it much easier to spread the virus. Cases are just starting to go down. Why would we ruin that now? This is a decision that needs to be taken under more consideration. Comment 5. Tia Marie Sanders. Hello, I am Tia Marie Sanders, a parent and racial justice advocate in the community, co-founder of the Novi Northville Racial Awareness Accountability and Action Group, and a member of the Parents of African American Students in Novi. And on both organizations and in an effort to see genuine commitment from the Novi Community School District Board and district leadership towards tangible action at advancing equity and racial justice, hereby endorse the nomination of Sandra Dookie. Ms. Dookie sits on the Oakland County Council for the DEI Committee, facilitated a successful 30-day racial equity habit building challenge via social media, served the Ferndale African American Parent Network. Her resume highlights her experience and extensive background in education, and her commitment to young people is unmatched. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ms. Dookie for several years through community advocacy work. I personally welcome her nomination. NNRAAA and PASSID welcome her nomination and hope the board chooses her for the position of MASB director. Comment 6. Kristen Hoy. Good evening, NCSD Board of Education and Administration. I'd like to discuss 2 topics tonight. The first is implementation of all hybrid students returning to full in-person instruction at the high school. My hybrid high school children currently have classes which, when hybrid, A plus B are combined and will have 26, 28, and 31 students in them. What are the options for these classes beginning March 1st? Will they be moved to a double classroom? Are such rooms available? Will sections be added to the same hours, different hours? Is there a teacher and space available to do this? Will there potentially be 30 plus students in a single classroom? Will students have to drop classes because there isn't enough room for them? My second concern with hybrid students returning to full in-person instruction is lunch. This is a dangerous part of the school day because students have to remove their masks for an extended period of time. My understanding is that all 3 lunches are currently full with 3 students at each table. How will twice as many students eating at the same time be accommodated? Will there now be 6 students at each table, meaning basically all seats in the cafeteria atrium are occupied? Will lunch tables be added somewhere? Is there space, adult supervision available to do this? while some students eat in their 4th hour room. The second topic I'd like to discuss tonight is the school start time changes for the 2021-22 school year. I honestly forgot where this issue stands. For fall 2021, will the high school be starting at 8 a.m. versus 7:15 a.m.? There are several issues at the high school level which I don't recall being resolved. For away competitions, for example, sports and fine arts events, will students need to leave 6 hours early or even miss the class period entirely to arrive on time? Will extracurricular activity practices end an hour later, meaning marching band would end at 10 p.m. instead of 9 p.m.? Or will the activity lose an hour of practice? In the fall, it gets started before 9 p.m. and there's limited stadium availability with light. Will there still be 7th hour courses? I remember that 0-hour classes will not be allowed because that defeats the purpose of starting school earlier. Perhaps Dr. Matthews could include some insight on this topic in one of the update emails. Thank you for the time and effort you put into our district. We appreciate it. Comment 7. Sarah David. As a virtual teacher, I have little to no exposure to the virus. I am safe. I have peace of mind and am able to focus on my students. My students feel that. Many hybrid staff members do not feel safe and are not mentally or emotionally well, and I'm concerned for them. The risk of increased exposure is stressful, to say the least. Hybrid teachers, you have moved mountains to make this year work. I see you, I support you. I appreciate the board's continued acknowledgement of them as well and hope that our district utilizes every possible safeguard and recommendation of the CDC to ensure their safety as much as humanly possible. Thank you. And comment 8. Sharon Trumpet. On behalf of the parents of African American students in Novi, I would like to thank the Novi Education Foundation and the Novi Community School District, especially RJ Weber and Darby Hoppenstedt, for their support. Thanks to the NEF Advancing Equity Grants, Hassan was able to partner with NCSD to bring a new professional development opportunity to educators at Novi Middle School. This training, Disrupting Injustice for Co-Liberation, was facilitated by Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice and gave our educators tools for recognizing and intervening when they witness racism and other forms of injustice. As a parent and a co-founder of the Novi Northville Racial Awareness, Accountability, and Action, I'm so grateful to see NCSD strive to create a community that values and empowers each of its members. Oh, one more came in just now. Number 9, Alexander Erskine. Dear members of the board, I write to you today to express my frustration with a specific issue caused by the rapid return to 5-day-a-week instruction for hybrid students. While this is not the only issue that has come to my attention, but it is one that I find extremely troubling. Staff members with serious medical issues have not yet been able to get vaccinated against COVID. We are seeing instances of immunocompromised teachers and interventionists who have been working hard all year with students being forced to choose between their jobs and the health of themselves and their family. They're being told they must take unpaid leaves of absence for the remainder of the year if they wish to get vaccinated before returning to work. Work where there will no longer be the safeguard of reasonable social distancing. One of the 2 primary preventers of COVID-19 transmission by, among others, the CDC, are district nurse and the administration. Why are these staff members being asked to leave for the remainder of the year when they may be able to return with a sizable amount of the semester to go? I've heard a lot this year about sticking together and taking care of our own. This is certainly not that. I would very much like to know how remaining with a long-term substitute is better than returning to a teacher these children know, respect, and learn from. Staff members who have been carefully selected by administration and approved by the board are being cast aside. I believe this situation would have been preventable or at least mitigatable had staff been included in planning the timeframe for the return to 5-day instructional week. I hope in the future, when major changes are being considered, that we staff are included in the planning as vested stakeholders, but also as those who see and feel both the intended and unintended effects of these plans. Thank you for your time. And that is all the comments at this point, Dr. Ruskin.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews, and thank you to the public for sharing your comments, perspectives, and your feedback. We appreciate you. Next, we will move on to the consent agenda items. We have approval of the minutes from the last board meeting on February 4th. If I can get a recommendation.
Move to approve the consent items as presented.
I support.
I support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mr. Smith. We can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please. We can't hear you.
Okay, how about now?
Yep.
Okay, I
Yep.
wasn't muted, it was something else. Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to our first action item. We have 5 this evening. It is the personnel report, Dr. Matthews. You're on mute as well. There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening, we have one retirement, Mary Miku, Special Education Parapro at Novi Meadows. One resignation, Kristen Shuprai, Receptionist and HR Assistant at ESB, and 3 leaves of absence. The first is Christina Armstrong. This is a year 1 childcare leave of absence for the remainder of the 2021 school year. Lauren Miller, 4th grade teacher at Orchard Hills, and this is a year 1 childcare leave of absence for the 21-22 school year. And Tithi Pardishi, Special Education Parapro at ECEC. This is a year 1 childcare leave of absence for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. If I can get a recommendation. Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopts the personnel report recommendations as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. Are there any questions or comments or discussion pieces on this? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for another roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the 2021 MASB Board of Directors election. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. As a member of the Michigan Association of School Boards, the Novi Community School District Board of Education has the right to cast a ballot for a group director in the MASB Board of Directors election. Regions are based on geography. Novi will be casting 1 vote in Region 8, districts with pupil membership between 5,001 and 11,000. In Region 8, there are 4 candidates running for 1 seat. Sandra Dukey, Ferndale Public Schools, Mary Hanser, Oxford Community Schools, Bridget McQuiston, Lake Orion Community Schools, and Gina Walker, New Haven Community Schools. Novi Community School District Board of Education is asked tonight to discuss tonight for whom they would like to decide to cast a vote for. At the regular meeting tonight, you will be asked to take action. Voting takes place via online ballot. The district receives 1 ballot, which has been emailed to the superintendent's secretary. After decision is made, the secretary will cast the ballot for the board. The ballot deadline is 1 p.m. on Wednesday, March 1st. And so tonight you are asked to select one of the 4 to cast your ballot for.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So at our last meeting, we had some conversation, asked the board members to read through the resumes and the CVs of the candidates. So I think that before we put out a recommendation, I think if there's any further discussion, questions, whatnot, without putting a person's name in there, then we can do that. And if there is not, then certainly if someone feels strongly regarding a candidate, they can just put forth a recommendation. Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I'll start. So in our last meeting, I was inclined to support Gina Walker because she was one of 3 candidates who joined an Oakland Schools meeting that I was at. But in the meantime, I have kind of given it more thought and Googled around, and I'm inclined to support Sandra Dukey. And I know we had one parent already talk about that, but I think the state association, MASB, needs more voices like Mrs. Dukey's. And She is also the chair of the Ferndale Community Inclusion Network. And I know everybody on, all the board members here have read what was provided to us, but just in terms of conversation, she was originally appointed to the Ferndale School Board, and then she won the election. So what I like about her candidacy is that she has broad support already within her local community, not just serving on boards of school board members, if that makes sense to me. So I think it's important that, I think that aspect of her candidacy is important, that she already has community members who support her for other things that she's doing outside of her school board membership. And I think that the state organization would benefit from a voice who is already experienced in the discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's why I am shifting my support to Sandra Dukey.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood. Are there any other further comments, Mrs. Roney?
Well, I had talked about at the last meeting, Bridget, she's from Lake Orion. She's also on the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know me and Danielle deal with her. I had liked her because she does a lot of advocate for the schools in Lansing. She's, been there, and she's also been on, of course, everyone can see 9 years, so I like her. We deal with her with the diversity, equity, and inclusion. She seems pretty thorough, and I just have a good feeling about her. But I mean, they've all got great resumes. I mean, so I don't think we could go wrong with any of them.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Mr. Smith?
I'd just like to ask a question to better educate myself. I've not attended any of the sessions yet, or maybe one or two for the education that we can get as board members, the MASB stuff. And then I know that from what I've read, there's these different levels that you attain as you take more classes. And it looked like Bridget and Gina had both, reached the highest level. I know, Kathy, you've done a lot of those classes, and I don't know, Willie or Paul, you guys have been around, or Bobby, how much weight should that carry? I mean, those two, Bridget and Gina, by far have the most credentialed experience, if you will. Obviously, they're a very different candidate than candidate Dukey, but how much weight should we be putting on that, if any? Or do you? So I'm just trying to seek to understand.
My personal feeling, if you care, or I would defer to Mrs. Murphy with her experience and taking a lot of classes and being on the board the longest. I know that Mr. Cook did quite a few of these classes. So actually, I'm going to let them make comment, and if any additional comments need to be made, I'm happy to do that. Mrs. Murphy, do you have any? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any opinion on what the weight of the piece that Mr. Smith is asking about?
Tom, I mean, I appreciate the effort and the time commitment that all of those take. I do think that it adds value to our service on the school board, for sure. I don't know how much of Mrs. Hood, you didn't mention it, but she is also the Bloomfield Hills School District pupil accountant and enrollment supervisor. So she is also an active participant in the school. So it's she's going to have a different perspective than perhaps, Birgit would bring, because the educational background is different. She's serving in the school. So I think it just really depends on what kind of what you value as a school board member. And I value the efforts, and we don't really know. I know she doesn't include whether or not she's taken classes in that. It could have been an omission as well, but I don't know how much to emphasis and value to put on that. Quite honestly, I don't know that that's something that we've ever even really asked before. I mean, do you, Mr. Cook or Mr. Mena, do you remember us ever really asking that question when we voted on this position?
I don't.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I can see that might carry some weight, and it might add a different value. Like I said, the perspective's definitely going to be different. I don't know if that was
That's fine.
helpful.
It's just like, I don't have a PhD, so I don't know how much, I wouldn't want to discount somebody that went to all that school and got their doctorate, and just because I don't have one, I don't place much emphasis on that. I've seen, we all know it's an incredible commitment of time to go through all that. So I just thought I'd ask. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other comments or discussion pieces on this? So my only input probably is that I think originally on the 4th, I had, before reading over this as in depth as we probably all have, I had recommended Mrs. Dookie based on the fact that I've attended a few MASB things, and Ferndale Public Schools was the leader in one of those classes when it came to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They also have a huge student voice piece within their district and a seat at their board table with an application process. So it's a different perspective, I think, that the Ferndale Public School Board of Education brings. And I thought that experience would be helpful in some things that, we discuss on a regular basis. But certainly as the board president, I am not going to make a recommendation. And I think that all of these candidates are highly qualified and serve in many capacities, both at their own local level and at the MASB. So if someone has a specific recommendation,
I'll make one.
Okay.
I'll move that the Novi Community School Board of Education's MASB Board of Directors election ballot for Region 8 be cast for Ms. Sandra Dookie, candidate for a 3-year term, and MASB Board of Directors election ballot.
Do we have a second?
I second.
So recommendation is on the table by Mr. Smith and supported by Mrs. Hood. Do we have any other further comments or discussion on this? Okay, looking around the place here, it doesn't look like it. So Mr. Mena, we'll be ready for a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes,
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
motion carries 7-0. Next, we'll move on to action item C, which is the 2021 copier equipment purchase. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. With the continued support of the Novi community, the district passed a bond in 2019 that will support facility and technology projects. Part of the plan for the bond projects was the refresh of district copiers. The district currently has 53 copiers with an average age of 7 years old. Part 1 of the refresh plan was to replace 35 black and white copiers, 1 color copier of the oldest and least reliable devices. In addition, the project will include the installation of paper cuts. The district received proposals from 2 vendors based on the state cooperative purchasing contracts, Applied Imaging and RICO. Each vendor has established contracts with school districts in the Tri-County area. Both vendors reviewed the district's existing fleet inventory, copy volumes, and serviceability to determine their recommendations. Anthony Lucrecchio, Senior Technology Coordinator, and Jeff Amaz, Technology Director, reviewed each company's proposal. The proposed equipment, copy volume, and installation plans were aligned as part of the review process. Each vendor included device rebates after installation. The replaced equipment will be disposed of with an independent recycler. The administration is recommending the Board of Education approve the purchases of 36 copiers, installation, services, training, and support from Applied Imaging in the total amount of $481,708.84. Pricing is based on the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network Cooperative. The district is recommending the Applied Imaging solution based on the Canon equipment design, the reputation of Applied Imaging, and the savings on support and maintenance over the RICO proposal. The estimated savings on the cost per copy is approximately $40,507 over 60 months. The purchase of copier equipment was presented to the Board of Education at the February 4th, 2021 meeting and is being recommended for approval tonight. So we would ask the board to approve that. Dr. Ruskin, I know that the board received some information from one of the vendors this week, and Mr. Maz replied to the board. We sent that out to the board, and we do have Maz and Anthony here this evening to answer any further board questions, but we would ask the board to approve the recommendation as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. And thank you for Maz and Anthony for being here. We appreciate you. If we can get a recommendation and then we can open it up to questions. Mrs. Roney?
Yeah, I'll recommend that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the purchase of 36 copiers, installation services, training, and support from Applied Imaging for the total of $481,708.84.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll support that.
Recommended by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mr. Cook. We will now open this up for discussion. If you have any specific questions for our technology team, they are here to answer our questions. Mr. Cook, please.
Yeah, Maz, can you kind of summarize your response back to the board so for transparency for the community? We really appreciate the detail you went into.
Absolutely. So we use several different cooperative purchasing avenues in the district. My Deal is one of the purchasing avenues which RICO utilizes. Mitten is another state cooperative purchasing avenue which Novi uses and Applied uses. What those are either state or intergovernmental contracts that allow us to purchase off of. Those have been competitively bid, and those awards are extended to either municipalities or school districts to purchase off of. So we are using the Mitten award for the Applied Imaging. The second item is we do, as we talked at the last meeting, we are going to dispose of our equipment through a recycler. We did not include that in the total cost of the agreement. We sought out our own independent, kind of see what the value of the equipment is, came in about $30,000. Those come with asterisks based upon condition and final inspection and what we determined we're going to dispose of and recycle versus if we decide we may need another device and want to repurpose it temporarily. So we didn't include that in the total cost of this project. Well, that'll be additional savings above and beyond the proposal. The third item, our contracts are directly with the vendors. So our existing contract is with RICO, and that was a 5-year agreement that is expired. The My Deal is basically the purchasing cooperative, as is Mitten. The contract is between the district and the vendor. Both of those vendors have service level agreements and 5-year cost containment in those agreements, which the district will enter into. So working with Mr. McIntyre, we'll get the contract, review that, and make sure that it is to the district's satisfaction as any contract, and then move forward with the purchase on that. Applied is in several districts already, and they've demonstrated exceptional service and commitment to their product line, and they're able to service both Ricoh and Canon devices. And then I think the last one is the cost savings. You know, we're able to save $40,000 over the course of this contract for 5 years. I'd be happy if I could save $40,000 on every contract I negotiated, because every dollar that we save goes back to the district, and you know, again, maintains our fiscal responsibility to our community. So every chance we get to have a good vendor with a good, reliable history and product line and save money, I think that's a double win for the district. So that's a kind of a summary of the basis behind this. The Canon product is also, I believe, a little bit superior to the Ricoh in my experience in using them in several districts. I have a long history of Ricoh and have always had good luck with them, but I like the Canon product line that we started using in a few districts about 4 years ago. It has some metal parts where Ricoh still has some plastic parts. So it provides some added durability and reliability over the long term. And as any of you know, copiers are subject to much abuse. People get frustrated with them very easily. Paper jams, it's, you know, a lot of people touch them. So I think the more metal parts you have in certain pieces and aspects, the more reliable they can be, and have demonstrated that in other districts. If you have any other questions, be happy to entertain them.
Thank you very much, Maz. Mr. Mena?
Yeah, thanks for that, Maz. Just a quick question, continuing on what we were talking about last meeting. One of the highlights of the refresh is the addition of this paper cut software that'll allow us to send print jobs to in essence a network of printers, and then you can walk up to any printer on that network and release the job. So you know, some people may think it kind of adds more time, but some people will say that's offset by the additional security that there is, because now they could send print jobs without having to worry about it being released if it's something of a sensitive nature. But this refresh right now is not going to refresh all the copiers in our district, right? It's only refreshing a percentage of them, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So until that time, then we're going to have two separate queues, right? Papercut will still work with both of them, right? So we're going to be implementing Papercut for the current Ricoh machines and the new Canon machines. But I think what you said last time is if you want to send a print job, there is no way currently to, in essence, you have two separate queues. You have a Ricoh queue and you have a Canon queue that you can pull from, correct? So you have to know.
Yep. And I don't have the exact inventory, but I believe many of the existing Ricohs that'll be in service are the smaller office machines. So I believe we'll be able to cluster some of those queues around the office staffs, and where the building common printers would be the Canon, since we're replacing more of our larger, older machines. So the instructional staff and the building staff would have more choice because we'll have more Canons out there than Ricohs. So the Ricohs that are remaining were, I believe, some of the smaller devices. But I'll confirm, you know, I can confirm that. But again, you will have two queues until such time that we replace all the devices and get Canon. There's just not a good interoperability between the, you know, different brands out there.
So we're going to actually go, at some point, there will be another bid for, we're going to have a similar conversation again to replace or refresh the ones that we're not refreshing now, correct?
Correct.
So in essence, we're not really bidding it out, because you're basically telling us we're going with Canon on the next bid as well, correct?
That would be our recommendation. Assuming, you know, again, experience with Applied and the Canon product continues in the positive direction that we've seen in the past, I would intend that I would be bringing Canon forward as a recommendation to replace the remaining devices.
And we're sort of locked in to doing that because we're relying on this Papercut software, let's say. We don't have it now, but it's something we think will take off, and the receptiveness of using that software will be positive. Have we looked to see if there's any similar software on the market that'll allow us to seamlessly use that product with both different vendors, so that you don't have to have those two separate queues?
I have not looked recently. When I did this in another district, we had the similar conversation a few years ago. And the compatibility is in the drivers between the manufacturers. PaperCut's one of the leading industry softwares. And then there are software by the different manufacturers. So Ricoh had its own kind of product line, and so did Canon. We've kind of gone to more of an agnostic that'll work across the devices without having to have some additional licensing costs as well.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess what you're telling me, you continue to look to see if any products come on the market, so that we're not necessarily, because if I guess what I'm saying, if we're going to refresh 2 years from now, and we decide that, on second thought, maybe we want to go in a different direction, whether it be Ricoh in 2 years or maybe some other vendor that comes out, we want to make sure that we don't lock ourselves into a particular vendor because we really want to use PaperCut.
Right.
We want a piece of software to pigeonhole us into having to select our next purchase.
Right. And PaperCut was a selection regardless of the solutions proposed. So both Ricoh proposed PaperCut and Applied proposed PaperCut. So as I said, it's kind of an industry standard software that works on multiple different brands. So you're not tied into a Canon exclusive software for Canon devices. So we can transfer this down the road if we decide that we want to move away from Canon. We can flip licensing. And obviously, as software evolves and technology evolves, where they become a little more agnostic, we will continue to explore those opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maz. Thank you, Mr. Mena, for your questions. Any other comments, questions, or discussion points? Okay. Seeing none, we'll be ready for roll call vote, Mr. Mena.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena? Yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
And Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you to both of you and all the work that you do for our district. We appreciate your due diligence on this specific recommendation. We will move on to action item D, which is the Walsh College property resolution. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On January 21st, 2021, the Novi Community School District Board of Education approved a resolution formally authorizing the purchase of the Walsh College Novi property. This purchase was to provide temporary or permanent homes for the Novi Adult Transition Program and Novi Career Prep Alternative Education and Adult Education, create space for our robotics program, and space for our virtual academy. The board authorized the superintendent or his designee the authority to execute the appropriate contracts and legal documents. Our attorney recommends the formal adoption of the attached resolution to ensure that we meet all appropriate legal standards. So tonight you are approving a formal resolution developed by our attorneys just to confirm the decision that was made on January 21st by the Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. If I can get a motion. Mr. Cook?
I'll move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the attached resolution on the purchase of the Walsh College Novi property and facility.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. If we have any discussion, this is just a formality, I believe, for the legal team.
Yes, and we do have Mr. Donnelly from Plant Mariah Cresta here this evening. If you have questions, we also have Mr. McIntyre and Dr. Kinzer, who've been involved in those discussions as well, if the board has any questions. But this is just a formality to kind of cross our T's and dot our I's.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Any specific questions, Mr. Cook?
Yeah, when I went when I went through and looked at the list of personal property, I didn't see the conference rooms listed in there. Were they separated out into some of the classroom listings, or were they? Because that's a pretty big conference room with a lot of tables and chairs in it.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike, if you're able to speak to that, but Paul, I'm not able to answer that question right now, but I can certainly check into it and get back to you.
I guess there is a classroom 507 and 508 with 112 chairs. So
12 chairs.
that's a lot of chairs. That must be it. Okay.
Thank you.
So is that question answered? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty much that.
Okay.
I don't think there's any other two rooms that handle that many chairs in there.
I would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any other comments or questions specific to the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, we are ready for a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. And we will move on to the final action item, which is resolution for school boards to meet in person. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On February 11th, 2021, MASB sent out a request asking interested boards to pass a resolution allowing for in-person school board meetings. A sample resolution is attached for your consideration. And the sample resolution that we are asking you to approve this evening would be, whereas school districts have been strongly encouraged to begin offering in-person instruction by March 1st, 2021, and each local school board has a responsibility to make that ultimate decision for their school district. And whereas the Novi Community School District has provided a hybrid in-person instructional option since September 8th, 2020, and has continued to work to increase the amount of in-person instruction offered in our district. And whereas all students and staff are permitted by the state of Michigan, including the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, to attend school in person. And whereas members of the school boards are the only individuals within their school districts who are not permitted to meet in person. And whereas requiring school boards to meet virtually while encouraging students to attend school in person, and for staff to work in person sends a mixed message to our community and staff. And whereas the Novi Community School District Board of Education would like the ability to meet in person with strong health and safety mitigation measures in place that are consistent with measures taken for all other school classes and activities. Therefore be it resolved, the Novi Community School District Board of Education requests that NDHHS and the governor allow school boards to have the option to meet either virtually, in person, or a combination of the two beginning immediately. So we would ask the board to approve that resolution this evening to hopefully get us to in-person school board meetings. Currently, they are prohibited by order of the NDHHS.
Dr. Matthews, if I can get a recommendation. Mr. Mena?
I move that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution for in-person school board meetings as read.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. Cook. Is there any questions or discussion points on this? Mr. Mena?
Just a comment, in essence, translating, in case somebody missed it on watching us, in essence, I think what we're saying here, by passing this today, so I don't want to speak for any individual, but is that, we want to meet. We want to meet in person. We understand, as the resolution says, that it looks strange that we're sending teachers to teach, that we're sending students to learn, and yet the board is not meeting, and that's a that's a comment that I've heard a number of times, and it's a valid concern and a valid comment, but it's never been by our choice. We've been always forced by law to meet virtually. So I do hope that this passes tonight, and I do hope that enough other boards around the Metro Detroit area and around the state pass this, and maybe the state will then allow us to start meeting in person once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Mr. Cook, I know you had your hand up. You're good, or?
Yeah, well, I was basically going to say the same thing, probably not quite as eloquently as Mr. Mena said it, but yeah, we would already be meeting in person if we had the choice. And this is not, you know, us being on the Zoom meeting and virtual is not our choosing. It's the MDH, you know, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So thank you, Mr. Mena, for what you said.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Personally, I will be supporting this as well. I know that just like everything else in our district, we have a great team that finds ways to mitigate safety measures. You know, we were able to meet a couple times in November, and Mrs. Holly did a really fantastic job along with Lucas, our technology team, to make sure that we could be in a larger space and maintain space so that we could facilitate the work of the board in a safe manner. And I know that they will continue to do that. For some clarity, this is really a recommendation urging the MDHHS and the governor to make an exception and change their current ruling. I just don't want anyone to see that this recommendation was passed and think that our next board meeting will be in person. We're still kind of at the will of them, but we're just giving our voice to be heard. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Mena, I think we're ready for a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll move on to information and discussion. We have 2 items this evening. First, we have the 2021 roofing program at Deerfield Elementary. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On January 15, 2021, the district received bids from 3 contractors. After the receipt of bids, Plant Moran Cressa participated in post-bid reviews with 2 firms, CEI Roofing and Butcher & Butcher. Concluding several discussions with both firms, the bond team recommends awarding to Butcher & Butcher. Butcher & Butcher's ability to meet our schedule and provide the specified materials were key factors in this recommendation. The budget for the Deerfield roofing replacement, including soft costs, is $2,795,963. Based on this award and anticipated soft costs, we expect this work to come in under budget with an anticipated final cost of $2,620,000. The bond team recommends the district administration enter into a subcontract agreement with Butcher & Butcher pending final negotiations with Plant Moran Cressa and Trim Law on behalf of the Novi Community School District. Attached for reference, the structure text award recommendation package dated February 3rd, 2021. Plant Moran Cressa is available at your convenience to answer any questions you may have regarding this recommendation for award. Roofing bids are presented and recommended to the board at this meeting, with awarding of the bids at the March 2nd, 2017 meeting. And tonight we have Kevin Donnelly from Plant Moran Cressa. We have Mike Dragoo from our maintenance department. We have Mr. McIntyre here as well. If you have questions about this bid, they would be able to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Does anybody have any specific questions or need some further information or feedback? Mrs. Murphy, I see you coming off mute there.
Actually, I was just going to comment. I have been on the board so long that I've outlived the roof at Deerfield. Yeah, so I know there's been problems with that roof for a very long time. I remember there being some flooding initially or something early on, and just a lot of challenges. So I'm glad to see that we're going to replace it. I know that it's that with the metal roofing that it's a little bit more of a challenge. It seems like, is that correct, Mr. Donnelly?
It is, but you'll have a long life with that new metal roof, and it'll last you probably 50 years.
Okay, I won't be on the board anymore then. Okay.
Hopefully y'all live the next roof.
There you go. I hope so too. Thanks.
Mhm.
Any other specific questions or comments? Certainly, if you think of something between now and our next board meeting, you can always send it to Dr. Matthews to get to the team to answer and offer any clarity for you. Okay. Seeing none, Thank you, Mr. Dragoo, number 2, and Mr. Donnelly for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
We will move on to our next information and discussion item. It is Extended Instruction Flexibility Plan. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. At the February 4th, 2021 meeting, the board and superintendent engaged in a conversation regarding allowing the superintendent to have the flexibility to be able to move between instruction modalities based on the COVID numbers that are trending. This comes tonight for discussion and will come back for action at the March 4th, 2021 regular board meeting. And so this really is just to bring back the comment that was made at the February 4th meeting to try to get a sense of if there's some language that the board would like to include in that COVID plan that the board has to approve every month so that we can make sure we include that language in that plan.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. I know that Mr. Mena was the one who asked for this to begin with in February 4th, so I will call on him and then we can all kind of divulge.
Thank you. I did, you know, as somebody mentioned, some of the comments that we had today, you know, we picked some metrics because we had to pick something, right? Was it scientific? Probably not, right? I mean, we had to pick something, right? We weren't getting any help from the county. We weren't getting help. Certainly weren't getting any help from the state as to a level that we should be on before they felt it was safe. So we did the right thing, and we picked something, and we agreed on something that we thought was fair for all parties involved. Certainly, you know, 10 people could probably argue these metrics, but it is what it is. So the purpose for bringing this comment up last time is I wanted to see if we could avoid having to have any sort of special meetings if the metrics were to flow one way or another. And I was hoping to give the superintendent the leeway to keep kids in school if the numbers started creeping up, but there might be some other variables involved where he felt it was still safe for keeping kids in school. So that was the second part. The first part was, and it looks like everything's trending now positively for kids to start coming back to school. The other recommendation that I was going to add was to direct him to allow kids to return to school before meeting those metrics as well, if, in his opinion, other data are available or variables indicate that it's safe to do so. So for me, it's to, and I have writing, you know, the board directs the superintendent to allow students to return to class before meeting the defined quote unquote safe metrics, if, in his opinion, other data or variables indicate it's safe to do so. In addition, the board directs the superintendent to allow students to stay in class even if the metrics go outside of those values, but in his opinion, it is safe to remain in class.
Does anybody have any comments? I have a specific comment to this or a question maybe to Dr. Matthews. No? Okay. So personally, I think that my question really is the legislation say? I mean, I know that it says that the school boards are entrusted with this decision and that we do need to approve this on a monthly basis. From a logistical aspect, I feel like there needs to be some flexibility and movement on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, the operations, and we've entrusted Dr. Matthews and his team throughout all of this to figure out all the operations, and they've done a fantastic job. I know he's like, yes, you have. But I think that putting this on one person's shoulder, we're 7 minds, and to get to this place was very complex and complicated, and I do not feel, for a multitude of reasons, that this should be just the decision of one person. So I would recommend or say that I would encourage Dr. Matthews, when he sees the need to potentially do what Mr. Mena was saying, that he asked to call a special board meeting sooner than later without waiting for the next board meeting, because obviously those decisions are important. We heard from our teachers about the transition time that they feel that they need. So I think that having the conversation as often and as quickly as possible will be important. But that's just my personal feeling. And if anyone, I want to hear everybody's opinion on this. So any other?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I kind of agree that Dr. Matthews does need some flexibility in some of this stuff, because the numbers can change very rapidly, for better or worse. They're dropping much faster than a lot of people thought. But when they go up a lot faster than, what I think we planned on. I do like him having the responsibility, the availability or the flexibility to do this. But I also agree that, that has been given, it's the board's responsibility. And to call a special meeting should only take a couple of days versus, an entire 2 weeks, which it potentially could be if we didn't. So I'm kind of at a crossroads on this, but, it's, this is one of those, I don't think Dr. Matthews would abuse his power either. So if we gave it to him, so.
Thanks, Mr. Cook. Any other comments or questions on this?
As we look to, we have to bring back a recommendation, as Dr. Ruskin mentioned, the legislation. Each month the board has to vote on this. And so, if Mr. Minnick can send that language to me, we'll incorporate that in the recommendation that comes to the board in March. All of us, I think, have done a good job of trying to navigate through some very uncertain times this year. And at the beginning of the year, we kind of identified some thresholds based on, the Michigan was not really forthcoming with a lot of information. So we relied initially on kind of a framework that I found from the Minnesota Department of Health. But as Mr. Cook mentioned, we kind of moved past those numbers in November, October into November, and we were still able to provide safe schools for our students. And so, it really is important to try to focus on what the numbers are telling us and what is happening in our schools. And so, I think together we've done a pretty good job of navigating through this. And certainly, before I make decisions, I include the board in those discussions. The dilemma really is the framework of the board meetings, which are every 2 weeks or twice a month. And so that's where it gets a little tricky, trying to figure out, if things change rapidly, do we need to call a special board meeting? And at some level, it would make some sense to do that. I know that we don't like to do that very often, and I certainly wouldn't abuse that. But I do think it would be important for the community to hear from the board as well as just the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Mrs. Hood, I know that you had something. Are you good or?
Yeah, I think I'm good. It helped to hear other board members talk through this. I would be reluctant to put the onus on moving modalities from the board to the superintendent. So I'd have to think about that a little bit more. Thank you.
Mr. Meno?
Yeah, just to clarify, so language that I was proposing would still leave the responsibility with the board I think what we're offering up, or what I'm trying to offer up, is sort of a little bit of flexibility, like a shock absorber to Dr. Matthews, to say, oh, regardless of what we decide with this language, the intention is that kids would stay in class regardless if those thresholds are made. So that decision is never going to leave board responsibility. Where the flexibility is being given is if the metrics were to go above while kids are in class, and Dr. Matthews decides that it is still safe because of other metrics, that we don't necessarily have to convene a quick school board meeting to determine and make a rash decision, that we should give him some flexibility, and then we can discuss it at the upcoming, whatever the upcoming board meeting would be to that. So that was my point of it. I'm not asking to give the responsibility to Dr. Matthews to say, hey, you know what, I know we selected this set of metrics and we decided that this would be the threshold where kids could be in school safe, but you know, I'm not feeling safe today, so I'm going to tell the kids to go back home. That's not what the wording is here. This is just saying, you know, if we go outside of the metrics, giving him some flexibility to still keep the kids inside the schools.
I have a question too, and maybe some clarity. I think that on the original recommendation in the plan, it says 3 consecutive weeks. So I do believe that we have to be out of the metrics for 3 consecutive weeks, which would allow plenty of time for either a special board meeting or even a regular board meeting. It's not like if we're out of compliance or out of metrics next, you know, we go back next week and we're out the following week, that we're going to pull kids out of school. Is that true?
Yeah, those are the metrics that we've identified. And my sense is that we'll be able to kind of follow those, because if you look at the rise in the October, November timeframe, they kind of continue to tick up each week. You know, the only exception to that could potentially be if there's some catastrophic rise in numbers, which I don't anticipate there would be. And if there would be, I would assume that the board would be willing to engage in a more prompt discussion about whether or not we should change the modality that we're currently in. And so I do think that us looking at trying to maintain some flexibility is a good idea, because we were able to do that in the fall when the numbers went high, but we were still able to have some safe conditions in our schools. It's obviously a little different now because some of the social distance piece is not going to be as prominent as it was back in the fall. But I do think that we're going to continue to monitor those situations very carefully to make sure that our students and our staff are safe.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Do we have any other comments?
So we'll bring something back to the board for them in March because we have to approve the plan again, but we'll include some of this language so that we can hopefully have some of that flexibility.
Great.
So seeing that there could be potential differing in opinions, we'll just have that as an addendum action item on that document.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we can have 2 clean votes and then we can move on quicker. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mena, and thank you, Dr. Matthews. Alrighty, next up we have our committee reports, and we have the curriculum committee. Mrs. Rowney.
Hi, we had a quick curriculum committee a couple Thursdays ago before our meeting. It was to discuss the PE credit and how we're going to handle that. RJ was there, Willie, Todd Pennycuff, and I know I'm going to butcher her name, so you can help me with it, RJ.
Heidi Pendergraph.
Okay, and we talked about what it is that we want, what type of commitment we want from the student athletes in order to waive that 1 PE credit. And I think there's still discussion we're going to have. And when we get it together, I guess we'll bring it to the board then. But other than that, Willie, anything you want to add?
No, I think it was a pretty robust discussion. What we really haven't gotten to a point yet where we've made any recommendations as to what the threshold is for how much time spent on an activity would be needed in order to get a waiver for that for PE. So.
And you know, I'm sorry, Tom was there also. Sorry, Tom. I just remembered your son in the varsity ski. So, and RJ, anything you want to add?
This is a conversation now that we will be bringing to curriculum committee one more time and then to the board, something we've discussed for some time. We're certainly not the first district in the county to propose this. This is also part of a very much more robust look at K-12 health and how we can approach that. So this is a package, if you will, of things going forward, making sure that we're including stakeholders like students and teachers in this conversation as well, and having a conversation about how we adapt. And I thought Mr. Pennycuff did a great job of explaining kind of the history of our PE courses and perhaps why some numbers are down. And I think that was a conversation, almost a history lesson that was quite good. So I look forward to bringing far more forth as a whole package and supporting the well-being of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney, for leading that committee and that robust discussion. I know that it's an important one and a lot of talk and work to do, so appreciate you. Next, we have our second opportunity for comments from the audience. Dr. Matthews, are there any further comments?
There are no further comments this evening, Dr. Ruskin.
Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Just a couple of items from me this evening, kind of a preview of coming attractions. In one of the comments this evening, it asked about school start times. We're going to have that information for the board at the March 4th board meeting to remind the board of discussions that we had last year and that we then furthered those discussions with our teachers this year, and we have a path to move forward. And so we will bring that to the board in March. That will also include some discussion about walk zones because as you recall, in order to have all 5 elementary buildings start at the same time, we need to have all of our buses available. And so that's going to change some of the walk zones so that we can have all those elementary schools start at the same time. And then tomorrow we'll send out another update to our community. The numbers that I received today from Oakland County Health have trended in the right direction. And so we will have our 3rd week of meeting the metrics. And so our K-6 group will, our students, our hybrid students, will come back to 5 days of in-person instruction starting Monday, February 22nd. That's our hybrid students will come back on Monday, February 22nd. Our virtual students will stay virtual. And some parents have asked why we're not bringing back all of our students. And the answer to that is really to try to continue to create safe conditions in our schools. When you think of our elementary building, instead of having 500 in the elementary building, we will have 250 in the elementary building. We'll be able to manage lunches better. We'll be able to manage the buses better. We'll be able to manage hallways better. And so we think that bringing our hybrid students back will continue to be able to create those safe conditions. And in December, when we asked parents to make a commitment, we indicated that the commitment would be for 2nd semester, and that if they wanted their students to potentially come back 5 days a week, they should choose hybrid. And if they didn't want that, then they should choose the virtual. And so we were pretty explicit in December with our parents. And so we believe that our parents understand this process. And so we will kind of move forward with our K-6 group on Monday, February 22nd. This week, we will also have met the metrics for our 7-12 group, and this will be the 2nd week in a row for that. And so if the numbers continue to trend in the direction they're going, we will meet the metrics next week, which will be our 3rd week. And so the 7-12 group will come back on March 1st. I know there are some concerns about class sizes in some instances that were mentioned tonight in the board comments or comments to the board. And we are trying to address those by potentially moving classrooms to larger rooms in the building, trying to ensure that we have as much separation as possible. But it is clear that we will not have 6 feet of separation in all of our classrooms. And in some classrooms will be down to 2 to 3 feet of separation between students. But we are continuing to wear masks, continuing to have hand sanitizers, continuing to have disinfectant wipes. Lunchrooms, we think we'll be able to be effective at keeping just 2 to 3 students at tables instead of 6 students, as was potentially mentioned this evening. We're going to spread students out. And so we have spent the last several weeks kind of addressing all of these issues, and we believe we're in a good spot. And so we're looking forward to welcoming all of our hybrid K-6 students back on Monday, February 22nd, and then our 7-12 hybrid students back on Monday, March 1st. And that's my report for this evening, Dr. Russ.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. We'll move on to the administrative reports. First, we will move to Mr. McIntyre, AKA Mike Dragoo, number 1.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. First of all, I want to thank the board for your action on the Copier refresh and also the Walsh College resolution. So thank you. And I also want to let the board know that the business office will be working with DTE to see if we qualify for any rebates for work that has already taken place in some of our school buildings. And we will also complete applications on future projects as well to see if we qualify for any rebates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Last Thursday and Friday, Dr. Matthews and I had the privilege of traveling the district and delivering years of service awards to teachers who had earned their 20-year and 30-year, 20 and 25-year service awards. For 20 years, a beautiful clock engraved, and for 25, an engraved platter. So this is something we normally do at our opening day assembly, which we were unable to do this year because of COVID. And it was great to be able to do it personally in teachers' classrooms, often in front of students. So it was, I think, well received, and we're still considering whether we might ask those individuals to walk across the stage this fall. And I'm not sure how many of them are really excited about that, but maybe. So anyway, it was a great couple days to get out into classrooms and spend just a moment celebrating with teachers that have served this district well for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. That's a nice celebration that I'm sure you enjoyed immensely. Dr. Weber.
Hey, so first off, really proud of our teachers and administrators for meeting the challenge coming up. I'll give those of you at home who may have questions on this, how we're attending to certain things around social distancing and doing our very best. So the district made an investment, for instance, in flexible furnishings. And we've actually used those throughout the districts to create mobile lunchrooms that are actually out in hallways, if you will, and creating an entire classroom environment throughout the school in the halls and in every nook and cranny. Also, as Dr. Matthews had mentioned, with our teachers teaching virtual, we're able to move into the rooms that they were in to spread those out. So I'm very, very proud of our teachers and administrators who in just the past week, and it was a shortened week, have been really doing everything they can to provide an experience for our kids that our kids deserve. I also want to say, from a teaching and learning thing, because that's kind of my deal, please understand that these next couple of weeks that our K-6 comes back, we are bringing in 2 groups of kids that have never been with each other. So those 2 groups are going to need to be melded together, and classes will now go from what was once 12 up to 30 in a classroom. So for those of you who have never taught before, it may be hard to get your head around this, but bringing in people who've never met halfway through the year and making sure that they know each other, feel comfortable, feel good, and that instruction happens in the way that the teacher wants it to happen is going to take time for them to do that. And I have personally given our principals and our teachers the grace to go at whatever pace they need to do that well. I am far more concerned, as we talked about at our last meeting, instructionally, our kids are doing for the most part quite well. I'm far more concerned about their social, emotional health and well-being and how they come together. So parents, it may feel like we're going back to 5 days, so there's going to be even more work or more stuff going on. I would contend that that I don't want to see a doubling of anything, because I think our staff and students have been getting after it. So thanks on that. I'd also like to congratulate, we have a new doctor in the house, and that is Dr. Julie Bedford. So congratulations to Principal Bedford for earning her doctorate, which, Tom, you are right. Not only does it take a significant amount of time and effort and follow through, but you're focused and laser-like focused for years on one subject, which is education, which is obviously a passion of most people in our profession. It would be kind of like going to, I guess, a stockbroker or somebody who works with money, who has received absolutely no training from the SEC, and doesn't know what they're doing. So I'm proud of Julie, and good on her. This Tuesday, we had, well, the students had the day off. The teachers had a day on, so did the administrators. And I'm very proud of our administrators and teachers who really went towards some pretty weighty issues. We had Easter SEALs come in and work with all of our staff, 7th through 12th grade, around trauma and secondary trauma, how we can better help our children as they come back from this pandemic. As mentioned by Ms. Trumpy, the middle school had some training capacity building around issues of race and ethnicity. That was the conversations were really good, and conversations that frankly we have to have. iReady came in and did professional development for K through 6 teachers, looking at the data from the winter, part of that which I shared the last board meeting. So that was really fantastic. And then our inter-school council meeting today, I want to thank our parents for participating in that. And I know Mr. McIntyre, they're excited for this, the senior all-night party, folks. They think they might have a place to store their stuff. Anyone who's had to try to find a place to store stuff, I said, there's a big parking lot at Walsh, but I have nothing to do with it. You need to talk to Mr. McIntyre. So I gave him your email. I think that'll go well. Thank you. And then finally, or 2 other things. You may notice this coffee mug that I'm drinking out of. It is Huron in Ontario and Michigan and Erie and Superior, otherwise known as Holmes. But our very own incubator class actually has a fundraiser that's coming up, and I want to share that with you. And if you can see it, you guys see it on the screen? Yeah? Good. So it's called Hustle for Our Homies. Our Great Lakes are in danger. Each year, 22 million pounds of plastic are leaked into the Great Lakes. The Novi Incubator wants to maintain our homes, which are, of course, this mug here. So we have our Great Lakes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior, while instilling an environmentally conscious culture in our community. So what our incubator course will be doing is doing 5 5Ks actually throughout every elementary area as a way to stroll, walk, and so on. It'll be socially distanced with all the money going to helping our Great Lakes. So when you hear that coming up, if you want to come for a walk and hang out in your local neighborhood where your elementary is, please do so. Finally, I had mentioned this before, but we have another group coming out of incubator called Leverage. I had the pleasure of watching Miss Jessica Gunesh, Danielle Birdie-Shaw, and Adva Ringel provide an hour of professional development. And I know Miss Roney, the My Family Services, I know that you have an affiliation there and know some folks from there. So what this Leverage is we have 50 high school students who will actually now be mentoring and working with students who are English language learners K through 6. So imagine you're new to the country. Imagine you came and moved in from India or Japan. And socially, there's that dynamic. There's the language dynamic. So these 50 wonderful kids and students are going to put their time and energy into being friends and mentors for the youngsters. And I am really proud of the adult advocates and allies in there. With that said, I think that's the last bit of good energy I'm trying to put in this world. As I look at my sheet, thank you, and I can't wait to see the students back in force on Monday and hear their laughter and get after it. So thank you to all of you as well. Be well.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. We will move on to board communication. Are there anything the board wants to share or comment on? Mrs. Roney?
Okay, I'll go. This weekend, I will be, glued to my computer doing the Winter Institute, trying to get some of my, little classes done. So, Tom, you could have joined me, but it'll be a learning experience. I'm sure I'll have a lot to report. I know, Kathy, you've done them. I think, Willie, you've done them. Paul, I think you've done them too. I know Bobby has too. And Danielle, you probably have too. But it'll be interesting. I know I've done a few, but every time I try to do them, they get canceled on me. So they did not cancel this one yet, but it starts tomorrow morning. So I think I'm good. So I'll report back. And again, RJ, thank you for that meeting. It was a real good conversation. Like you said, Todd Pennycuff schooled us on a lot of things. So that was really nice. So, and I look forward to welcoming back all the kids, and thanks all the teachers and administrators for getting this going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Mrs. Hood, I see you're off of mute. See, this is my new thing. You guys are going to be happy
I know.
in person, and you actually have to
Yeah, yeah, you're kind of sneaky that way. I don't know if I like it.
Mhm.
I was just going to say, so at one of the last NEF, at Oktoberfest NEF, I was speaking to a mom who was very proud that her son had just been hired by, I think, NASA. Might have been Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but I think that's all big NASA. And the NASA's rover Perseverance traveled 239 million miles, and it landed on Mars today. And that is some pretty cool science. And I think it is also cool that we have kids who are graduating from our schools, getting their university educations, and going to really leadership positions in organizations. So it's just very impressive and pretty neat. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Mrs. Hood. Any other comments or communication from the board? Okay. Hearing none, I just want to say, I know that it's an exciting time coming up here. There's a big transition happening. I had a little thought the other day, Dr. Weber, you'll appreciate this. And I was sitting there, I don't know, laying in bed or watching TV or doing something. And I thought, we talk a lot about ACEs, and we've talked about ACEs in the past. And, unfortunately, now even every student in our district who's maybe never had an ACE, every single one of them and our teachers now have one. So I appreciate your comments on, it's going to be a transition. We're moving into an exciting time, bringing our hybrid kids back. We're all looking very, very forward to that next step. But certainly, as we heard tonight, some of our teachers are feeling some anxiety, and I'm certain that our students will be too, whether they're kiddos who've wanted to get back, so badly, and then once they get there, they're going to have, a little bit of pause. So I think that this next week is going to bring some challenges and some really great delight. So that being said, thanks to the board and administration and all the teachers for all the work that's been done over the last year to get to this place. I know that everybody's up for the challenge, and as always, they continue to work forward in doing what's best for kids. So appreciate that. Alrighty, since no one else has any comments, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mrs. Murphy's waving at me, so we'll take that. Mr. Mena made a recommendation. Mrs. Murphy seconded. If we can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yeah.
Trustee Mena? Yes. Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Have a great night, everyone, and a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.